See, it's not so much, you have gender roles, you have tradition, you have modern things that are happening now. But now it's best to look at it as, or to consider, what are the strengths of the person, right? And that's who should have the responsibility. And welcome to the Purpose and Powerful Podcast, episode 26.
That's right.
26, 25 episodes recorded. So welcome to our 26th episode. Tonight we're talking about marriage reality, money matters. I'm your host, Erica Lester, here along with my esteemed co-host,
Real Jabril Wilson. How you doing?
So welcome back again to another episode. Thomas, for being here with us. Thank you so much.
You are so welcome.
And so Money Matters, Marriage Reality. We had a great show last time, and I mentioned money. Money came up a little bit, but this is where we're going to dive deep on that. So first question out the gate, anyone that wants to answer, whether it's Dr. Jabril or Colonel Thomas, let us know. Did you, and if you did, how did you approach the topic of finances before getting married?
I did. It didn't go too well.
Share with us how that was. Like, how did you approach that, and what part of financial literacy or information or was part of your conversation?
Well, there wasn't no financial literacy. It's like, who's going to handle the bills? And she was like, I can handle them. And I was like, okay. But then that was the end of that. And I threw all the bills away and walked away. And less than 3 weeks later, I was like, what are you doing? And a moment of fellowship that got heated, a heated moment of fellowship pursued and ensued. And so we kind of worked it out over the first 3 years, but I brought a lot of stuff to the table because I was country boy, I was helping out my parents, I had land I was paying for, I was trying to raise a family, and she was working to help me. However, I wasn't hearing it because I had my own deal, what I wanted to do and how I thought money should be raised. So, you understand how it ended. So I'm going to leave it right there.
Fantastic. Dr. Jabril, question for you, sir. In the spirit of financial harmony, how do you and your spouse currently manage financial responsibilities and decision-making as a team effort?
Funny, I was ready to answer the first one because that was the foundation, but
I will hit us with 2 for 1 then.
All right, so ask the first one again because I was ready.
Fantastic. First one was, what financial conversation did you have early on before getting married about finances?
I was transparent about what I have, what I'm doing. So I showed her, from what I was making or what I could potentially make, credit score, showed her that because it shows a lot about your integrity, and not saying that if your credit score is low, that is something about your character integrity, but she could see that I was pretty consistent, and that helped her a little bit to feel like she could trust me and to help her if she needed areas with the financial literacy. So before you kind of get into quote unquote someone's business, it's good to show what you're doing or not doing so that they can understand and open up as well. So that was the first conversation we had about what I'm doing. Now, the second question.
How do you guys manage financial responsibilities as a team?
I handle more of that. That's more of my gift for my lane. And she accepted that. It's not an issue. So I do the majority, but there are certain utilities and certain add-ons. It's like I make the cake. She puts some icing on it and some sprinkles. And that's how we do it. So we all do it together. It's just that one person has a little bit more responsibility. And I do not believe, for that's gender specific, financial literacy is not a gender thing. It's just who's more responsible, just like cooking. Just like cooking. I mean, the male could be the chef. It doesn't matter. As long as the food is good and everybody's happy, then it works out in any marriage or any relationship. So I just want to say that I think when people think of finances, traditionally you thinking of the male, as they say, the breadwinner, but breadwinner is not gender specific. So I just want to put that disclaimer out as we go into this show or whatever. It's going to evolve from that, but just have an open space in mind for that, the idea, and for what Dr. Jabril feels is true.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing.
Sure.
When I was married, just kind of piggyback off of what you said, I was, because I had been married before my last marriage, we did have the conversation, what financial responsibilities are you handling right now? What kind of bills do you have? What kind of debt do you have? What kind of income are you making? What are your financial goals? Independently, together, we had those conversations. And then in our last show, I'd said that my former spouse actually had a couple of pay raises, and we had that marriage counseling session, mentorship, really, where we were rotating different houses. And it actually was our topic, even though I would have thought we would be talking about something else. That just was like oh, I'm so surprised. But even in that, and even after that conversation, we didn't change the structure of how we did things. I primarily took on the role of being the finance person, but not just a finance person, but I primarily took on the role of managing and budgeting, because it was something I was suited to do. It was my profession. It was what I like to do. And it's my way of my contribution, if you will, to the relationship. See, it's not so much, you have gender roles, you have tradition, you have modern things that are happening now, but now it's best to look at it as, or to consider, what are the strengths of the person, right? And that's who should have the responsibility. So finances could have been my profession. That doesn't mean that translates into me doing finances well. But I was operating in finances professionally, but I was operating finances personally well. I had an idea about what I felt good credit needed to be. Us paying down debt, like I was looking at strategy. So even though I didn't have all of the information, I was still learning, and early on in my career, it was still, I was better suited because I was in a better position. Having been married before, have understood those things. My former spouse was on his exit out of the military at the time. So here he was, this single soldier, being able to have much free reign over his income and expenditures to do kind of what he wanted. So he was going into a structure and where he had no structure before. Your government property as a military person, especially someone that's active duty, and all you have to do is show up. You don't have to do much thinking after that. Bills, what bills? He stayed on base, they took care of him in all areas. So it wasn't something that he had to think about. But since I was out here lifing it as an adult, I was better suited to handle the responsibility. So with that, Thomas, let me ask you this, because we mentioned also too that you've mentored and counseled other couples as well. What have you seen as the most common financial challenge that married couples tend to face? Or where do they struggle with the most when you're counseling that you identify in the realm of finances? You're on mute, sir.
Okay, no wonder I wasn't hearing them. All right, so I would say control. So everybody's grown. They've been living their lives. They have been doing things on their own. And And for one to say, okay, I'm going into this marriage and I have these things um, going on, sometimes that's embarrassing because, you know, whether it's baby mama drama, or whether it's the daddy drama, whether it's, you know, just like you're saying, the woman's making a whole lot of money, the men is, and I would say control and trust actually, because the trust overrides control. Because if you don't trust the person with the money, then you are not going to want to give them control or relinquish control. Then that's where, I mean, I'm being transparent. We still struggle with that sometimes because, you know, throughout our marriage, we've been separate. I've been in one country, she's been in another country. I've been in a country in war, and she's hanging out back here taking care of the household. And, you know, with the way the military is structured, you see what's going on, but you still have to, you know, oh, I need a new pair of boots. It's 4 o'clock in the morning and you know, in Texas, it's 10 o'clock in Iraq or Kuwait. And you're like, I need $150 to buy some boots. You go out there and instead of waiting, you're going to do it because, hey, you know, it's my money. And that was the wrong way to look at it. So we are getting a lot better. We still have separate accounts, but she has access to all of my accounts. And so she has access to do what, you know, to go in and look and see whatever she wants. And so sometimes she does, and sometimes she doesn't. Like she went in last week and like, your savings suck. And I'm like, yeah, I know. And so it's a work in progress because things have changed. I went from, you know, my salary changed every 2 years. When I retired, it changed more. So, and, you know, more responsibilities. So it's a work in progress. But I believe we're doing a lot better.
Awesome. Benjamin Arrington, good evening. How are you?
Hey, doing all right at the moment.
Fantastic. So we're talking about money matters in a marriage. And my question for you, if I may ask, is what advice do you have for couples who struggle with differing spending habits?
Oh, that's a good one. Something that I basically kind of learned from my parents is because I didn't hear all of what my husband had to say, but what I basically learned from my parents is basically you have a yours, mine, and ours account.
Okay.
And so then that way, essentially, there'll be so much money in the yours account and there's so much money in the my account. And I'm only concerned about what's basically in my account. And I know what I can have. And so then I spend however I feel because that's my account. He has his account. And so he does likewise. So there's no there's really no conversation at that point about how he spends his money or how I choose to spend my money. But then you have the my account, and that's basically the ours account. And the ours account is where you will naturally discuss things. And the ours account is associated more with the house, you know, that type of thing. So, um, you know, like I said, I got that from my mom and seems to work. For me, it works. I mean, sometimes, yeah, he does question some of my purchases, but, you know, I just kind of look at him like, yeah, okay. and I do the same, but for the most part, his purchases are his purchases because that's with his money. And then, like I said, my account is my account. So that, and that's what I would suggest, especially because we are all going to have different spending habits, and we're going to have different viewpoints of. Because I know when we first got married, because my mom would say, "Well, his money is your money, and your money is your money," type deal. And when I mentioned that to him, he got mad. Oh, he got mad. He was like, "Oh no, 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 no." So, but essentially, like I said, I found out from my parents that's how they kind of worked it, and so, and then sometimes, you designate with you, even though you have the yours account and my account, sometimes you'll still designate, well, hey, you take care of this bill, and I'll take care of that bill, even though you still might have the general pot there as well. So it keeps confusion down, keeps arguments down as well.
I love it. This is the first time I actually heard that. I've heard the second one a lot, where what's his is mine and what's mine is mine. But
Right.
I do like the separation, and the three things that always will kill or make or break a marriage is sex, money, and power, right?
Right.
Communication is the power dynamic, obviously. But yeah, that yours, mine, and ours. I love that. And then it just diminishes the fights.
Right. It does.
But I do believe that ours, we bring it all to the table. The communication is, it's our money. We're going to do it this way. We're going to agree on this. And then, hey, it's cool.
Right. Because usually the R's comes into play when you're making large purchases. Your purchases are several $100s. I mean, you can set a limit, and then at a certain point, then that's when it comes into discussion. Hey, any purchase over, I don't know, $400, we talk about. So
I like it. I like it. I really do. What do you think about that, Dr. Jabril? Do you guys do something similar or?
Yes, definitely. I believe that people are grown. By the time you get married, you're grown. So you're going to have different ideas, different mindsets, different needs / wants. And as long as the things are taken care of as a family, then the other things, just let them do what they want. Because they're going to end up doing it anyways, or have a desire or resent later on. So if people are allowed to still have some sense of self, I think that's awesome. That's how you grow, and you don't hide or sneak and do things because you've agreed. So it goes on both ends. So I mean, I think that if one person can do it, the other, and that's what makes it fair and balanced.
And for me, I came from a family, a background where mom ruled the money, and daddy just worked all the money, came to the house, he dumped it on the table, and she would handle bills. And then she started, daddy started complaining about, well, this bill's on the table. What's going on? This was when mama started having dementia. So we're still struggling somewhat to figure out what mom did with all the money, because dad's like, well, I got $100,000 here. Well, I got $20,000 here. Where did it go? And nobody can understand where it went. So it made me a lot more cautious on how I was doing business, because I was just shaking the bacon, making stuff happen. I'll go back and tell you about what I was doing afterwards. But it made me, open all my accounts up, put her name on it, so that, if something happens to me, she can go in and she can see it. And then the major purchases, starting to talk to her about them and explaining my why, even though, And I'll be honest, sometimes I'll listen, and other times I won't. And I eat crow because I didn't listen and she was right. But when you have to look at the one, I think you have to look at the one that's not in the fire, that's in the firefight, because you become narrowly focused. You have to have somebody that's standing on the hill and looking at the financial picture of the overall family, and then saying, hey, this is where we at, this is where we're going, these are the things we got going on, and then be able to say, okay, yeah, but not saying, not now, baby, I'm in the middle of a fight, and I need this now because this fight is based upon me getting this, da, 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 da. And she's like, really? What happens if you don't get that? I will die. And she's like, really? And so she has to pull me off a cliff because, we had a coffee shop. Now I'm gonna say this, you also have to bring somebody else in the picture because I had Erica and Nisi sitting there saying, don't buy the coffee shop, don't buy the coffee shop. I'm like, the opportunity of a lifetime. And my eyes was lost over and I bought a coffee shop. So, and not looking at, the financial field of the coffee shop, what are all the ins and outs, because I was just coming out of the military. Like Eric says, hey, I had blinders on because I wasn't used to doing major finances. I walked into the office of my unit and I would tell my boss, sir, I need $28 million. And he would say, why? And I'll go through a justification and it showed up. And I'm like, okay, cool. And, with my local base, I had that same kind of autonomy. Hey, sir, I need $20,000. Okay, Thomas, how you gonna pay it back? Well, I'm gonna do this. Okay, I get it. And Niece was like, Thomas, count your money, baby. Count your money. I didn't listen some of the times, and I listened back, and I had to go back and say, okay, let me redo this. Let me look at it, because I wasn't looking at the big picture. I'm only looking at where I'm fighting at. And so we have to, as men, we have to look at our women and look at them, or I won't say as men, but as partners. We have to look at who's in the fight and who's not. And then, make a decision. It might bounce back and forth between the both of you of what you do. But if you bring it to the table, then there's no regret. And it's not that I told you so, or, you find yourself in financial demise, and then, you're getting pointed out because this is your doing without talking. All right, I'm done for now.
Okay, so Dr. Jabril, what questions do you have? I know you're jumping at the bit. I know you have some very insightful questions you'd like to ask. You're still on mute.
Seems like I'm having a tech. It's like a frozen on my portal.
We got you. You coming through.
No, in terms of looking at chats and stuff, it's not allowing to see. So I didn't even. So I'm wondering. So I may have to make a statement, but I don't really have a question. But how you doing, Saran? Just wanted to say hi. You're with Wealth Creators. It's good to see you.
I'm gonna say one more thing. Now, there's one thing I can say about my wife, and she did not rub it in my face. She does not come back and throw up the victory hand signal and do the victory dance. She says, okay, how we gonna fix it? Or she would just say, okay, I already know what that means. The rest of the story, how we gonna fix it? And, and she will give me the opportunity and the time to fix it. That's one thing. She is not going to rake me over the coals about decisions that I make that go south. But she does for it. And that's the thing that I love about her, because, she knows that there are a whole lot of things on my plate, and she gives me the autonomy to do that. But at the same time, she looks and says, I got your back. You just have to make sure that you're letting me understand what's going on. And I still have a problem with telling her everything. But I'm striving to do better at that, and letting her into the world, because, you know, there's the Harrington family, her and I, there's the parent family, my parents and I, there's the children family, that because all the families break out, once they get grown, they become their own entity. And so, and they can play mom against daddy more than they can do it when you were under the roof. So you got to manage all of them, ensure that you put all of them on the table. Because for a long time, I took our money, and from a sense of, you know, what we got is one thing I talk about. What I was doing with the boys, I would talk about. But what I was doing with my parents, I was saying that's none of your business. And that was wrong. And God beat me up on it, and I stopped. But you know, when you start pulling the scab off, sometimes it hurts. But she's always been there, understanding, saying, "Okay, baby, work with this," and that's what she did. So I got to give her credit and give her the kudos for that. Love you, baby. Thank you.
That is so sweet. I just want to say that no one said anything about the coffee shop. Her and I have never even had a conversation about it. Just so you know, you were all covered, and we already knew. We both know without even having a phone. If he's gonna do what he wants, we don't even. What can you do? We've understood that. So,
but I learned. That's my line. I'm sticking with it. I learned. I overcame, adapted, and finally, I don't know, you know, we're still, you know, trying to pick up the pieces with that. But she has allowed me to do that, and that's the blessing.
Let me ask. I had a closing question, but I don't know. Saran, are you married? Oh, okay, great. Well, that's fine. Well, we're gonna ask anybody who's married or been married. It's in a short phrase. Let me ask Queen Arrington. She reflecting on your experiences. What has been the most significant lesson about managing finances in marriage that you found?
It's a tough job. And it's one of those things that it can become a power play if you allow it to be. And you just have to realize, you know, for me, I know he has his little quirks. I've got mine. And so basically, believe it or not, what I do, not just money, but in all situations, especially when we don't necessarily agree, I send it up to God. I send it up to God, and I say, "Okay, God, I'll let you handle it." Long time ago, and he used to get mad at me when we would have disagreements and whatever. And sometimes he gets a little difficult, and I would just finally say, "Lord, he yours. You take care of it."
Yes, you did. I'm like, that ain't got nothing to do with this conversation. I mean,
But
yes, God is in control. I got that. However, I'm looking for your information. And she's like, no, I'm giving you what I want, and you're trying to change what I say. And I was good at manipulation. And, I came out of the military where I had to justify everything that I did. And, I was getting tons of money whenever I wanted, because I could justify stuff, make it sound good and make it look good on paper, and then they can execute. And so bringing that into the marriage, I had to change. Oh, wow, that's a beautiful thing right there to bring out. Don't bring your work into it's like Erica was saying she's a finance manager. Don't bring that, you can bring that into the marriage, but don't let that be your soapbox. I manage millions of dollars for this company, and you telling me I can't manage $100,000 for us? And I actually did that one time. I'm like, look, I just got a $28 billion contract, and you tell me I can't manage hundreds of $1,000s? Come on, really? And God said, no, you can't, because you were looking at it from a construed lens. and you need to pull your partners in because you can't let your work and what you're doing at work dictate what you bring to the table at home. Cause it's different. Okay. For now.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, hey, I guarantee you it works. It works. Because we all belong to God. And I think before when we were talking about marriage, there's a husband and wife, but it's also it's a covenant with God. And God is in that covenant. And so a lot of times if we send stuff up to God and then let it come back down on the other side, then God will take care of it. And there won't be as much confusion in the process. So when we get to that point, sometimes I'm like, okay, God, whatever you say, send it up, because he's gonna send it back. Whatever it is that God wants, it should come back down to both of us as being the same. And if sometimes it's still not what I necessarily want, I just kind of yield, because I know that, sometimes it's a learning process. So that's usually what I do.
And I'll tell you, when she does that, what I've learned is, now I'm going to the Father and said, okay, God, this is what I really want to do. What do you say? Can I do this? Come on, Dad. Now I'm begging God, like, come on, Dad, do this. And God says, come on, man, really? That's really what you want to do for me? And so it puts the onus back on my relationship, not just with my wife, but my relationship with God. And thank you for saying that, because it did that. And because just like she says, if you're going to do it, God should make a way that you could see your way through it. And many times we dive into stuff not seeing how we can get through it, because we're not waiting for God to give us an answer. We just dive. It's a coffee shop. But with other things that we're doing, I'm waiting. I'm sitting back, understanding, building plans. I talked to Erica. I talked to Niecy. I talked to lawyer friends, looking at all of those and view of what we're doing, and there has to be trust. And when you have them do the research, trust the research. If you have ways that you want the research done, then tell them up front, hey, if we're looking for this, if you can bring me what I'm writing or whatever, because that's one of the things that, the military, if it ain't black and white, it ain't tight. And so for us, I'm like, I need it in black and white. And she's like, oh, you don't trust me. But it's not a matter of trust many of the time. It's a matter of just making sure that I can regurgitate it to somebody else and they give me the same reasoning of why I'm not doing something. I'm done.
Thanks, Thomas. I want to just say that it's evident why financial struggles can pose significant challenges. They also give opportunities for us to grow and understand and have that deeper connection of respect and support and willingness, so that our financial journey together can be more successful. So honoring each other's viewpoint, still being an individual, but with any part of our marriages, as Erica was talking about, sex, communication, and finances. With these finances, we got to keep them together, because if any of those threes are not working, it can end in disaster. So hopefully this episode helped let you know what you're doing that's good or right, and things that you may need to still work on. And then some of it is just a work in progress. As Queen Deborah just said earlier, it's work. It's work. It's always going to be work. So just hang on, and that's how you build your marriage. Remember, if you're not,
you gotta stand. You can't be hanging. You gotta stand.
Oh, you said you can't hang. You got to stand.
You gotta stand, because if you're standing on the word of God, if you're standing on your marriage, if you're standing on your trust with your spouse, then you have a solid foundation. The moment you hang it, you have let go, and all you're doing is hanging on by the hair of your thread or hanging on by a bar. You have no foundation. You can't turn. You can't bend. You can't do anything. You're at the wells of the light, and life will tear you apart. And what the Bible says, let no man put us, what God put together, let no man put us under. And many times in my counseling, I said, who put you together? Well, God put us together. I said, so why are you trying to tear yourselves apart?
All right. Well, you
So,
said you summed it up. I mean, next week when you talk about people who are married, we're going to talk about people who are not married. Why? Because they chose not to settle. So Erica will just tell you what we're having next week. You don't want to miss that episode.
Absolutely. Just as a reminder, be sure to subscribe to our podcast on YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, or our softerside.com website. So next year or next week,
Here.
oh, 1 year down the road, next week, join us for our replay episode of Single by Force, The Divorce Dilemma, 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central. And as with all ways, we continue to explore the issues that matter most in relationships and personal growth. So until next time, stay committed, stay powerful, and stay working towards your purpose and prosperous life together. Have a great evening, everyone.
Thanks again, and stay connected. We'll see you soon.
All right.